Hey, Damien here for Automotive Superstore. In this video, I'm talking all about subwoofers and how to choose the perfect one for your application. There's an endless choice on the market. You can buy a raw driver, a slim driver, an under seat, one that already comes in the box, one that comes with a box and an amp. Do I buy a raw driver and build a custom box for it and buy an amplifier for it? There are so many choices. Here are the top 5 things you need to think about to find the perfect subwoofer for your car. So tip number 1, this pertains to the biggest problem I find with most people when they go out to buy a subwoofer system, is they run out, they grab themselves a subwoofer first, then they run home and they go, how do I fit this in the car? And that's the absolute wrong way to go about it. You start with calculating the enclosure volume and the enclosure location, as well as the loading of the subwoofer. Let's start with an easy one. Let's try a one-box car like an SUV or a hatchback where the enclosure volume's all one big area and you've got a nice big load storage space in the back. With the subwoofer across the back of the back seat, with the subwoofer firing backwards towards the tailgate, that's going to give you your highest amount of base loading in the cabin. It's the longest distance from the cone all the way around to the front of the car. You're going to have the largest amount of base for any input power that you can give that subwoofer. If you turn the woofer another direction, it's going to be less output pretty much in every example. Every cabin has an ideal loading position, and that sort of determines also, well, where's the enclosure going to go? In a dual cab, it's probably going to be under the rear seat, under the front seat, or behind the rear seat, and you're kind of limited as to what you can do for loading in those. I have had examples where under the seat, I've fired the woofers down and loaded off the floor, and that's increased output, so that's a possibility. But yes, the ultimate thing is you have to start with the enclosure volume first, because that tells you what size and diameter subwoofer you've got, what size the face is, whether I'm forced to fit something small like this or I can go to something large like this. Usually you've got this plane, there's plenty of space. This plane here, it's easy. It's the depth often that becomes a problem, and maybe you have to go to a shallow subwoofer like this one here from Vega to solve that problem. Once you've got the location of the enclosure and you've got the volume, when you've taken the internal measurements of the height and the depth and the width, and you've thrown that into your calculator and you've worked that out, you've got a volume then to work with. You can then download some manuals from some of the drivers that we've got, or look at our specifications, and some of them will show you the recommended enclosure volumes in sealed and ported. And then you're starting to get an idea of, can I fit 310s, 112, 4/8s, 210s, whatever you would want to get. And that's where you've got to start. That's tip number 1. Tip number 2, now we know something about where the enclosure is going to go in the car. We can sort of say, well, do I need to go with something modest like an under seat, like this one here? Is it simpler for me and within my budget and really within my ability to build things to just buy a subwoofer in a preloaded enclosure like this one here? And these come like this, and you can buy a separate amplifier, or they even come with an amplifier built into the side of the enclosure, or as a package with a separate amplifier all in one or predetermined. Or am I ready to take the plunge and build myself a custom enclosure and choose a specific raw driver for that, and away I go and build a custom enclosure. With under seats, there's a few things to think about. Again, you're sort of limited to the constraint of the size here. It's the least ideal loading position, really, right in the center of the cabin. You're going to have the most destructive things happening around. If you've got no other alternative though, an underseat woofer is still way better than no woofer at all. There are a few underseat woofers that we sell. They're all kind of this form factor. It's going to be an 8 or a 6 or maybe even a 10 in a very slim prefabricated enclosure with an amplifier built in. They'll have a remote controller for them so you can turn them up and down. They'll have speaker level input. And really it's just looking at the dimensions of these, looking at the space under your seat, considering where aircon vents and stuff like that are and how low your seat needs to go to make sure it doesn't foul anything. And then just choosing the one that suits you. The biggest one is always going to be the best one. So the biggest one you can fit, go for that one is my recommendation. With preloaded enclosures like this one here from Vega, it's nice because they go to a lot of effort to manufacture them nice. They've got a nice bevel edge around the edge here. The woofer's countersunk. This is actually a ported enclosure, and it's got an angled back to encourage you to put it in the back and load it towards the rear of the car. It's a nice way of really just dropping in the enclosure. You've got no headaches, it's nice and neat and tidy. And we have those available in singles and duals, in 10s and in 12s. And that's actually a really good solution to drop in. It's nice and simple and away you go. Then there are the preloaded enclosures that have amplifiers built into the side, and you just run all the wires to that location and you plug them into the enclosure on the side and away you go. My preference though is to choose a separate amplifier and have a preloaded enclosure like this one. It's a bit more custom, and you can say, well, I want this much power because I want this particular driver, or I want two 10s, or I want a 12 and I want an amplifier with this much power. You've got that flexibility. However, the ones that have the amplifiers built into the side of them, they're pretty simple and easy to work with. So if you're still with me, that means we can get on to tip number 3, which is choosing the diameter and the style of subwoofer to suit the system and the enclosure volume you've got. So here we have an extreme example. So this is a 6.5-inch subwoofer. This is a traditional 12-inch, medium price point one. And then here we have a shallow mount for behind a dual cab, for example, or under a seat where you've got very limited space, or like in my own car where I built an enclosure to replace a large traditional single 12 in a ported box with an underfloor that was nice and shallow and gave me all of my storage space in the back. And on top of that, I recommend that you choose one of the largest drivers you can choose, as opposed to two of a smaller size from the same range. So one 12 of this range versus two 10s of this range. That's because one 12's got almost the same output as two 10s, but costs only a little bit more than just a single 10. And so that will allow you to buy maybe a higher grade of subwoofer and get an improvement there as well. Also, it's simplified for the enclosure design, and for the amplifier choice, you've got fewer voice coils to worry about. And with one driver, you can typically choose a dual 2 or a dual 4 ohm, giving you a choice of many or virtually any mono amplifier on the market. Tip number 4. So let's talk about the enclosure in more detail and decide, are we just going to buy an off-the-shelf one from Air Pro that we can slap a woofer into and away we go, or are we going to custom build one altogether? So you've measured up your area, you've got an idea of what the total volume is going to be internally of the enclosure. That's going to help you determine the number of drivers you're going to be able to use and whether it's going to be a sealed or a ported enclosure. Now, sealed enclosures, they're really flexible. There's a lot of fudge factor, and what that means is you can be out in the volume of the internal space of the box by a large margin and not make a big difference to the sound overall. So let's just take this Subwoofer Vega 12 here. It might need a 27 to 30 litre sealed enclosure. You could go as little as 25 or as high as 40, it'll still work. On the flip side of that, a ported enclosure is very, very different. It's not just a sealed box with a hole cut in it. The relationship between the volume in the port and the port area and the opening in the port and the volume inside the enclosure are all critical to the tuning of the port, how good it sounds and how low the turbulence is coming out of that port. And so building a ported enclosure is not really super simple for a first timer. There are some online programs you can use to help you design them, and there'll be a video that I'll do shortly that'll be released in this channel that'll explain how to build your own ported enclosure for a 12-inch. For a 12, for example, you want an enclosure around 1.5 cubic feet or around 42 litres of volume with a tuning frequency somewhere between 36 and 42 hertz, depending on your listening preferences and the driver design specifically. You can find out more by just downloading the manuals, or you get the manual in all of our subwoofers that will give you recommendations like this one from Subwoofer Vega, and it gives you sealed and ported recommendations for all of the drivers there. Makes it nice and easy for you when it comes to design the enclosure yourself. So finally, tip number 5, and that pertains to voice coils, impedances, the power ratings of the subwoofers, and then matching all of that and the multiples of the ones you've chosen to the amplifier you're going to choose. And hopefully you haven't chosen the amplifier yet, because then you'll be going backwards instead of forwards. So for an example, we've got this subwoofer here from Subwoofer Vega. It's a dual 4 ohm voice coil, so it can be wired in series for an 8 ohm load or in parallel for a 2 ohm load. That's ideal for many mono amplifiers, most mono amplifiers make their best power into a 2 ohm load. But if I want to use 2 of these, well, 2 ohm loads in parallel is 1 ohm, and therefore I need an amplifier like this one here from Sue and Vega, the B51, that makes its best power into a 1 ohm load. I don't want to put a 1 ohm load on an amplifier not rated to do that, because you'll harm the amplifier. Then there's the example where you are bridging 2 channels of a 4-channel amplifier to drive a subwoofer, and here it's a bit trickier. Most 4-channel amplifiers, the minimum impedance load per channel is 2 ohms. The trick is when you bridge 2 channels together, each individual channel sees half the total load that you put on it. So that means if it's a 2 ohm minimum load per channel and you bridge them together, the total load can be no lower than 4 ohms. And that means you need to choose either a single 4 ohm voice coil subwoofer, or you can choose a dual 2 ohm voice coil subwoofer and wire the coils in series for a 4 ohm load. And so think about the number of drivers you've got, the number of coils you've got, the total power you need across all of those voice coils, and then go choose your mono amplifier. All right, so let's summarize those 5 points. First of all, work out where inside the car the subwoofer system should fit, which way it's going to be oriented, and then that will give you an idea how much volume you've got to work with for the enclosure and whether you can fit a large driver like a 12 or you're limited in space and have to go to something like a 10 or something even smaller than that. The second thing to think about is, can I just fit an underseat woofer in the car and that's all I need, or should I go to an actual full enclosure somewhere else in the car? From there, you've got a choice of going, well, do I buy a preloaded enclosure and one with an amplifier built in, or buy those separately? Or should I go and design and build an enclosure myself? When we get to that stage, you can actually build the enclosure, or we've got a number of prefab ones that you could choose from, so you can choose the driver and the enclosure and the amplifier. Once you've got to that stage, you're almost there. Really, all that's left is to work out the total number of voice coils, the total power you need, and to choose the perfect amplifier. So there you go. They're the top things you need to know when buying a subwoofer for your car. I hope you've liked this video. There'll be a link down below where you can go through to our website and get a great deal as always. While you're down there, like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.